Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. If you could please take your seats, we'll get started in just a few minutes. Thank you.
In Pasadena, they talk about this thing a lot, the Pasadena way. It's kind of like the American way, only on a smaller scale. It's the Pasadena way. It's the fact that we have access to one of the greatest institutions of higher learning in the entire United States. That would be Caltech. We have a NASA facility here that has helped put men on the moon and probes on Mars.
There's some incredible museums in the area. There's a lot of cultural activities which makes the city extra special.
And we also have a community that helped break down racial barriers. This is the place that Jackie Robinson came from. We are local, we're in the community. We're right on Colorado Boulevard. The Rose Parade goes by our front door.
We actually covered 39 of the Rose Parades.
The Rose Parade, the Rose Bowl, these are ancient traditions. The most satisfying thing is to be connected on a local level.
Local news really matters. It matters to the readers, it matters to the writers.
It doesn't matter what the platform is, whether it's social media or whether it's our websites or whether it's the paper, we'll always be there to be getting that news out, even if by then we're doing it through telepathy.
All right, thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Pasadena Star News Mayoral Debate. I'm Jessica Keating, Deputy Opinion Editor for Pasadena Star News, and we welcome you tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. We will get underway with our debate very quickly. As you all know, we're here to learn more from candidates Jackie Robinson and Terry Tornick, who face one another in the April 21st mayoral runoff. But first, I'd like to introduce Michael Anastasi, Pasadena Star News Executive Editor and Vice President, has a few words to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. You know, when we do the next edition of the video, I want to make sure that we note that this is also the place that Van Halen comes from. Though the boys are getting up there a little bit, we might have to put that with the ancient traditions part. Okay. Oh, we love them. Come on now. Thank you all for being here. A couple of people have asked me whether we put that flag next to Frank as a prop when we did the video. And I can tell you that that flag was there on the first day I met Frank, and it's there today, long after we filmed that video, because it speaks to the profound beliefs that we hold as journalists and our role in democracy. It's great to see such a large crowd here today because you all hold those principles dear as well. I'd like to thank the candidates. I think if you've paid attention to the news just the last 2, 3, 4 weeks here in Pasadena, you know that this is a time that the city is in need of leadership. But I think I speak for both candidates in saying that whoever wins, they'll be looking back out to you, the folks who are here tonight, and your neighbors to help them in getting the city moving forward for the future. So with that, thank you again, and I would like to introduce our host tonight, the principal of the school, Mr. Mark Anderson.
I got my fan club right here in the front. So he mentioned the video about Van Halen. Next time you do your video, you are also the home of the greatest school in the world, which is Marshall Fundamental Secondary School. Thank you. Those of you that aren't familiar, this is not only the greatest school, it's actually the largest school in Pasadena as well. And we are so honored that you have asked us to host this today. So great for our students just to be a part of the civics lesson. And I know that you guys are running for mayor, think that's probably the greatest job in Pasadena, but the truth is, being the principal of this school is the greatest job in Pasadena. And I love our schools. Thank you so much for all your support of our public education. And thank you very much for coming here tonight and for voting in our city. Thank you very much.
Hi, me again. Okay, so just a couple of notes about tonight. I wanted to let everyone know that we have two crews filming us tonight. We have the Pasadena Star News video crew here, and our rebroadcast will be shown at our website, pasadenastarnews.com, tomorrow. You can find it there. Also, we have Pasadena Media here as well, and if you would check pasadenamedia.org for listings, you can view the debate there. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I want to bring out the panelists first. And tonight we will be taking questions from Frank Girardo, Pasadena Star News editor. Thank you, Frank. And public editor Larry Wilson. Just a note about the format for the debate. As I mentioned, Frank and Larry will be asking questions of our candidates. The candidates will be alternating turns answering questions first. Each candidate has 2 minutes to respond to the question, and then there will be 1 minute for rebuttal if requested. And tonight we have our candidates with us. Let's go ahead and welcome them to the stage. We have Jackie Robinson. Thank you. And I should have said Vice Mayor Jackie Robinson, welcome. Thank you. And City Councilman Terry Tornick. All right, we determined by coin toss who would be giving their first opening statement. Candidates have 2 minutes for their opening statement, and winner of the coin toss was Mr. Tornick. Mr. Tornick, when you are ready.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the Star News for organizing this tonight, and actually a number of thank yous. I'd like to thank the PUSD and Marshall for hosting us. I'd like to thank my granddaughter Annabella's teacher here at Marshall for offering extra credit to students who attend here tonight. And mostly I'd like to thank all of you for being willing to show up and listen to us tonight. I think the references to the flag and all that are very pertinent, and people talk about turnout and suggest that people aren't interested in what happens in local government. The evidence here tonight and what we've seen at the other forums suggests that that's simply not true. I've been walking our city for over a year to hear what people have to say about Pasadena, and what I've learned is that people all over the city care a great deal about Pasadena, but they know that we can do better. We're facing a lot of challenges that was referenced already, many of them financial, and I'm sure that our panelists are going to be questioning us about that tonight, so I don't have to anticipate that. My educational background in government and planning, my work experience as planning director in Pasadena, as a private businessman working throughout Southern California, my volunteer experience on the Planning Commission, and as a board member of several nonprofits that produce affordable housing, and my elected service on the City Council, where I serve as chair of the Finance Committee, I hope have prepared me to help you tackle and overcome some of these challenges. Maybe we'll find out tonight. I hope that you'll agree and that you'll cast your votes for me on April 21st. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Robinson.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I, too, would like to thank the Pasadena Star News, as well as all of you here in the room tonight, and the Pasadena Unified School District for hosting tonight's forum. My name is Jackie Robinson. I am the current Vice Mayor for the City of Pasadena, and I've been a member of the City Council for the last 8 years. I also forgot to add that this Jackie Robinson is from Pasadena too. And Van Halen actually went to Muir, of which I'm an alumni as well. The reason that I'm running for mayor is because I want Pasadena to be the most progressive and innovative city in this country. And I believe that my service for the last 8 years in District 1, combined with my personal experience of being born and raised here in Pasadena, has adequately prepared me to be your next mayor. And I say that because District 1 is a microcosm of this city. We have multiple very different levels of socioeconomic status in District 1, from the wealthy to the working middle class to those that are in much need of assistance, both from the city and other agencies. We also have the largest amount of public open space in District 1. And our district is very diverse, not unlike Pasadena, and in fact, some of our districts here in the city are very homogeneous. I believe that being able to work successfully in District 1 has prepared me to be mayor, and I'm proud to have the support of organizations and individuals like the National Women's Political Caucus of Greater Pasadena, the Los Angeles County Democratic Party, as well as the Pasadena police officers. I believe it's going to be imperative that our next mayor is a collaborator that's able to work not just with our colleagues on the city council, but with all of you here in the city to work towards resolving some of our most pressing issues that we'll both be expressing our views on here tonight. So I ask all of you respectfully and humbly for your vote on April 21st. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Our first question tonight comes from Larry.
It does. Thank you very much, Jessica. Thank you to the candidates for being here and to Mark and his school for having us. The first question is going to go right to topic number one in many ways out there, the embezzlement. And I have a follow-up after the initial part of it. So what does it say for both of you? And Jessica, remind me who's going first this time?
Ms. Robinson.
So Jackie's going first. What does it say about Pasadena's leadership that $6.4 million can be stolen right under the noses of Pasadena city officials in City Hall? And when did you first know about the embezzlement?
Well, I think it says that the City Council needs to play a greater, greater role into the day-to-day role of City Hall, recognizing that we are a city manager-run city, and so the city manager is the administrator. But as mayor, I would take a greater role in ensuring that we have the mechanisms in place across all departments, not just the finance department and public works department, which is where this particular instance took place. This is something that I think about every day, and I think about it because I hear it amongst, talk of employees at City Hall. I hear it in the community, and it's something that I was actually very both disappointed to hear and angry at, because the public trusts City Hall to be safekeepers of your precious tax resources, and it's a disappointment that a city employee would break the public trust and even break the trust of those of us at a City Hall that are working in a very honest way to give all of you the world-class services that we expect and deserve here in City Hall. As mayor, I'm committed to continuing to work with our citizen task force that was just recently appointed to help us work through some of these issues related to resolving how the embezzlement happened, but more importantly, how to make sure that it never happens again. And as mayor, I look forward to continuing to make sure that we have the necessary protocols in place to be able to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
And Vice Mayor, Vice Mayor, when did you first know, when did you have your first inkling through official channels or back channels that this was going on?
Well, it is true that the City Council was briefed, not on specifics, I would say approximately, possibly maybe 6 months prior to the public information being released. But even then, it was briefed. It was not in specific detail. We did not know the extent of the information that the suspect was eventually going to be charged with. So I, speaking as one council member, can say that I was honestly very surprised and disappointed and angry at the extent to which, and both the length of time and the amount of dollars that were stolen from the city.
Thank you. Terry, same question?
I think that the embezzlement scandal is a symptom of a larger problem. I think what we suffer from in City Hall, and I say this with all respect for city employees as a former city employee, I think we had a lot of people that were taking their eye off the ball. And I think that some very basic sort of accounting 101 procedures were ignored. And I think the reason I think it's symptomatic of a larger problem is because what we've suffered from, I think, is a lack of accountability in the city. So that if people don't follow the rules, if they don't do their jobs properly, there haven't been any real consequences. And I think when that happens over and over again, it opens the door for a crook, which is what we had here, who was able to exploit a particular wrinkle in this account to exploit the system. And I'm not sure which is more appalling, whether it's the amount of the money, the $6.4 million total, of which I believe most will be recaptured through insurance. But I think even more appalling is the term of the theft, the fact that there were so many different people that had passed through these departments as department heads, as city managers, as city council people, and yet this individual who came to work in 2003, by 2004, was stealing. And so we need to take a long, hard look at our procedures and our attitudes and make sure that we can assure the public that we are taking their money seriously and doing a good job with the scarce resources that we have. And in terms of the timing, I think the Vice Mayor's schedule's about right. Sometime in the summer, we had an initial briefing without any specifics about dollar amounts or duration, that there might be something afoot.
So that's right. Pardon me, that's what my follow-up is for Councilman Tornick. So how is it that a numbers guy such as yourself could have sat on key committees that were overseeing the utility and not be able to see such a large chunk of change going out the door over 11 years? Not that you were there for 11, but how did you miss it? You're a numbers guy.
No, that question sort of betrays a fundamental misunderstanding of how the system works. I mean, this is not a situation like some small town where the council votes on every single expenditure and reviews every bill that comes in. It's just too big a budget. This is a $600 million enterprise. So the council's role in the city manager form of government is to establish policy and hire the city manager, and not, as one of the candidates suggested earlier in this competition, walk between the desks and look over people's shoulders. That's the reason that the government is set up the way it is because the conclusion of the good government people in the early 20th century or the late 19th century is that we need to keep the elected officials out of walking through the desks and dispensing patronage and doing other nasty things, and leave it to the professionals. So to ask a question like that suggests that somehow we missed the boat, and it misrepresents, I think, exactly what the role of the elected officials is vis-a-vis what the role of the professional staff is.
Vice Mayor, would you like a rebuttal?
No.
No? All right, thank you. And our second question is from Frank.
Thank you. And thank you to you, Principal Anderson. We sure love this beautiful school, and it's a great facility. I'm glad y'all came out tonight, too. So this question goes to Councilman Tornick. Better grab some water. You've been talking a little bit here. Okay, so there's been a lot of complaints about the police department. And this isn't just overnight, but this has been going on for years, and specifically in Northwest Pasadena. And those complaints are about the behavior of the officers and the things that they do. And now we have an instance where the police union has thwarted the public's ability to look at the officer the Office of Independent Review's report into the shooting, the slaying of an unarmed teen named Kendrick McDade. There's a lot of lost faith in the police department. What steps would you take as mayor to restore the public's confidence in a badly damaged organization that would be under your purview? And there will be a follow-up.
I think I'm a little bit troubled by the way the question is phrased, in the sense that I'm not sure how pervasive the distrust of the department is throughout the community. I mean, I have direct experience in walking in all parts of the city, and frankly, I think in most of the city, it's not an accurate representation to say that they mistrust the police department. I do agree that there are parts of the city where there is a very serious concern. And anytime we wind up with a shooting and a dead kid, clearly we all have to take it very seriously. And I think that this whole independent investigation, which should have done a lot to expose whatever failures there might have been in the process, and do it swiftly, has been a debacle. And I think that it was mismanaged in terms of how the fundamental structure of the investigation was initiated. The right step was made. The city manager and the mayor stepped up and said, we're going to have an independent investigation, which I think was an appropriate move, by a respected outside agency, and we will release, both the manager and the mayor said that we will release all those results to the public as quickly as possible. And the expectation was then, on the part of the community, that in fact is what would happen, and it didn't happen. And as I look back, and I've never been able to read the report. I mean, it's not like I've seen the report either. So I think that the way that the investigation was structured was faulty from the outset, because it was structured in a way that created an opportunity for the patrol union, in an effort to safeguard its members' rights, to thwart release of the report, and that's been a catastrophe from everybody's point of view, including, I think, the police officer's point of view.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Testing. Hello, can everyone hear me?
Good, Jackie.
So, absolutely, the shooting of Kendrick McDade is a tragedy, and one that I can identify with and am compassionate towards Ms. Slaughter, his mother, and all of the family members involved. And I personally express my condolences to the family. And in fact, being in contact with the family of not just officer-involved shootings, but pretty much every shooting in this city since I've been a member of the city council, I made the personal decision of going and speaking with the family, even when it involved the city. And that's a difficult thing to do, but that's one of the things that I believe council members and the mayor is going to have to be responsible for. Being mayor is not going to be 100% of the time rose parade and smiles and pictures. It's often leadership in these difficult times, and I believe that both as council member for District 1, where in 2007 the majority of the shootings that took place in the city were in District 1, and also even now as we're dealing with the aftermath of both the barn shooting and the McDade shooting, that the mayor is going to have to take an active role in healing the community. I agree that I disagree that there is rampant distrust of the Pasadena Police Department. I believe we have a fine police department, and that's evidenced by some of the external outside awards that the department has received. That said, there are clearly systematic issues within the department, some of which were outlined recently in the Veritas report. And I think moving forward, one of the things that I would request as mayor is that in these instances, when we do have another officer-involved shooting or some other instance where an outside report needs to be made, that we make sure that we direct the city manager to direct whoever the consultant or researcher is going to be to to not write the report in a manner in which it will require for it to go to court in order to release the information.
Thank you. And here's my follow-up to you, Councilwoman Robinson. First of all, you mentioned reports, and two of the most recent reports, one that we've seen and one that we haven't seen, criticize the tactics of the police department, criticize the training of the police department, and say there are serious flaws from top to bottom, not only in the way officers interact with citizens, but in the way they've conducted homicide investigations. And in fact, 5 or even a half dozen homicide investigations are directly affected by the lack of training and the lack of officer ability to do things in the way that agencies do it elsewhere in the county. You have the support of the police union. How can you assure the public that you're going to act in the interest of the public and not in the interest of the police union and the officers whose very actions are being criticized in this report?
I do have the endorsement and support from the Pasadena Police Officers Association, and I'm quite proud of that because I've worked closely with them. They have been instrumental in helping me put on programs and activities within the greater Pasadena community. And again, the Pasadena Police Department, in large part, most of the employees are well respected within our community. We have 230-odd police officers, and the majority of them are good men and women doing the work that they're supposed to do on behalf of the community every day. I will agree, there are some officers within the department that are problematic, and we know those names, but by no means is that the majority of the department. And I think it's going to be important, whether or not I have their endorsement or not, the next mayor is going to have to work closely with the police department, with the community, in order to resolve some of these relational issues. And I do think that there's room for a bridge of some person that can, help us bridge the gap between the community and the police department in a way that we all work together collaboratively to resolve both the information transparency issues that exist, but also just the relational issues of making sure that people respect the police within our community, that they in turn want to be police officers if they're born and raised here and already know our community, and making sure that all of our public safety employees are adequately compensated so that they can be competitive with other cities, but also receive that adequate training that they'll need in order to interact with our citizens.
Thank you. Councilman Tornick, would you like a rebuttal?
No.
No? All right. Next question is from Larry.
So this one goes sort of back to the embezzlement and back to the cops. Councilman Tornick, you're starting on this one, and everybody in this room has been, I hear what you're saying about the way that the council form of government works. Everybody in this room, or most of you all, have been on boards of directors, and you understand that you've got staff to do things, and you understand that your job is to be like the council is in Pasadena. At the same time, everybody who's been on a board knows that effective board members press staff. Maybe as council members you weren't in that position, but as the mayor, I sort of see it like the Queen and the Prime Minister. The Queen and Prime Minister get together every couple, not to disparage anybody, get together every couple of weeks and they have this little session. So you've got that bully pulpit to deal with the city manager as the mayor in a different way. What specific kinds of safeguards would you put in place both to ensure that public funds aren't embezzled and that the police chief is keeping his folks on the straight and narrow?
Well, in terms of the practices, we have 3 separate investigations underway now. But the most important one is the one that's taking a look at what they call internal controls. These are, I am a numbers guy, and I'm also the treasurer of the Burbank Airport Commission, and I'm the treasurer of a nonprofit housing organization. I spend a lot of time staring at numbers. And I'll tell you that there's a tremendous misconception about what audits do. Audits simply determine whether or not the financial statements are correct. Citizens assume that if you audit a fund, that it would prevent the kind of abuse that we had here. In fact, it doesn't. And what we do need to do is to reorganize the testing of our internal controls. This is very boring stuff. But it's something that we're spending a lot of time on. We have a whole analysis of our internal controls, which is the actual testing of what's happening to the money and where it's going. That's not something that will happen at a city council committee meeting, but it is something that we can review the results of. And that is underway both on a professional level with an internal consultant and also with a group of citizen experts who have been appointed to take a look at it from the outside, people who have expertise in various businesses, to make sure that this doesn't happen again. The kind of accountability issue, now you sort of conflate it a little bit. I mean, the accountability issue with regard to keeping the police chief or any other department head in line, the way that we're organized, without making this sort of a government lecture, which will drive everyone out of the hall, is to make sure that we hire the city manager. That's our hire. It's the city manager's responsibility to determine that the department heads are behaving the way they're supposed to. And we need to hold him accountable, and that's what is going to happen. And that is the subject of ongoing meetings between the mayor and the city manager. You're right.
Thank you. Jackie?
I'm sorry, I believe the question was how do we hold the city manager and the police chief accountable?
Yeah, exactly. And also what specific safeguards would you put in place to the extent that, as Councilman Tornick says, I'm conflating two issues?
Well, as mayor, again, Councilmember Tornick is right. As city council members and mayor, we are directly responsible for the city manager, and through our direction, we entrust him to be able to direct the rest of the department heads. Going forward, I think it's going to be imperative and as mayor, I'm committed to working with the other remaining members of the council to make sure that the city manager knows that as much as we rely on him, that we need to have transparent information to us as well. And even though we don't direct other department heads, such as the police chief, I've been very proactive as a council member in meeting with department heads, especially when it relates to a separate issue. There's nothing against us receiving information from department heads. I think it's important to have a relationship not just with the city manager, but with department heads, and frankly, city employees as well. And I think that I've developed a reputation for being approachable within City Hall and within the community, and all of that's going to be important moving forward in order to make sure that I have my marching orders from the community in terms of what they expect, and can in turn relay that to the city manager.
Thank you both.
Councilman Tornick, did you have a rebuttal?
No, thank you.
No? All right. Just pausing for just a moment here. I neglected to let everyone know that we do have a live blog. If you are multitaskers in the audience, you can follow along on Twitter. The hashtag is PSN Debate. Okay, we're moving on. And this is to Frank. Your next question, please.
Hashtag new question. Hashtag different topic. Hashtag I love this school.
What is it? Hashtag past debate? What is it?
Past debate. No?
No, PSN Debate.
PSN debate. In fact, I love this school so much, and I do like the PUSD. I've had nothing but great experiences in the schools, and this question kind of goes to that. Yes, I think we all realize we're not electing you to the head of the school board. However, as Queen, King, Prince, or Prime Minister, you will have some role in, how people perceive education here in Pasadena. And there's a quality of life index that showed that 23% of the students that are of school age who live in Pasadena attend private schools. And you got to admit that's pretty shocking. And in fact, the PUSD thinks that it's going to see its enrollment fall significantly to newer depths, and it's going to have, and they're going to have to make hard decisions, closing schools, unless you, as mayor, have a plan to bring folks back. So, Jackie, what would you do to bring people back into the schools?
Well, first let me say that as a proud PUSD alum, and I am biased towards John Muir High School, go Mustangs, we absolutely have to support PUSD schools, and as mayor, I'm committed to that. I had an excellent experience in the Pasadena Unified School District. I attended Cleveland, Wilson Middle School, and Muir. And in terms of the opportunities that I had as a student, what wasn't offered in PUSD, I was able to supplement that through many of the organizations and nonprofits that are here in Pasadena that are extending their resources and time to PUSD students. And some of those even included attending other schools. I was a student at Polytechnic when I was in middle school when the math class that I needed wasn't offered at my school. And so I think that's one of the things that we can do as a community, and one of the things that I'm committed to doing as mayor is making sure that our public schools do have a relationship, because there are a lot of private schools in Pasadena, and I think we can, our students in the public school system can benefit from some of those programs that are offered. I also believe that we have to do a better job as a community, and I'm committed to this as mayor as well, in terms of sharing the good news of what's going on in the school district. And I started this in 2007. I remember there was a forum that I invited the Pasadena Star-News to, and it was frankly a community discussion about, you know, why is there so always the negative shared in our local papers? And I think the media is a partner with that. City Hall is definitely a partner with that. And that's one of the things that I plan to do as mayor, is start a good news campaign. And frankly, there's organizations in our community that are already starting to do that and that have been doing it for a long time, not excluding the Pasadena Educational Foundation and the Penn Parent Network, but we do need to have a stronger, more robust community campaign about the good things going on in PUSD so that people can have a fair assessment of what's going on in our schools.
Terry?
So as luck would have it, tomorrow is the first meeting of the elected officials that are participating in Collaborate Pasadena. And this is a new enterprise that is attempting to pull together resources from the City of Pasadena, the PUSD, City of Sierra Madre, and Altadena, so there'll be an Altadena Town Council member there, as well as the faith-based community, the business community, the parents and the students. It's all of the stakeholders, to try and organize in an ongoing institutionalized way a cooperative methodology to support the children, and to determine how we can even measure our successes. I think that there isn't enough time spent on the good things that are happening in the public schools. Another one of my granddaughters is here tonight, who's graduating from this building this year. And she has had an excellent experience in the public school system. And so there is good news coming out of the PUSD. Collaborate Pasadena is the official and municipal effort to try and sustain that and make sure that all the money that we're spending from a variety of sources, whether it's in the health department or the libraries or even the police department, are being used in a way that can really maximize the impact on the children so that they arrive at school ready to learn and they're supported as they move through school. And I'm very optimistic because we've got a superintendent of schools in Mike McDonald, and we've got a city manager who's committed to this. We have a school board that is very much aligned now, and a city council that's very supportive of this enterprise. And I think we can make a difference, not just in getting the good news out, but in making sure that the trend line, which I think is now positive, continues in a positive direction.
Thank you.
Go, you mighty Mustangs. And I assure you that when I was in junior high school, not middle school, I never had to go to Pauley to find a math class that was tough enough for me. Algebra was just fine at Elliott. But the next question comes from students here at the Eagles of Marshall. And we got a bunch of questions in, and most of them, or many of them, boil down to this. What can the next mayor do to help the city of Pasadena increase employment opportunities for young people, which are almost non-existent now? Terry?
The city's role, I think, is not so much to provide direct employment for students, although we have some programs that do that. But there's such a competition for funding, it's not realistic to think we can make a huge dent there. What we have to do is make sure that there are employment opportunities in the private sector, that businesses are flourishing in the city, and so that they can have the opportunity to hire kids in the summer or after school. We have several opportunities in that way. We have certain sectors of our economy where we really have growth opportunities, and many of them, I think, can accommodate students in terms of part-time employment. The hospitality industry is one of them. We have 4.5 sort of hotels under development right now. And the restaurants that they support, and I met with the restaurateurs just last week to talk about proposals about the minimum wage, which also impacts youth employment, and what the implications of raising the minimum wage might be on youth employment. So we need to focus on the hospitality industry, develop jobs in those areas so that not just adults, but children, younger people who need after-school and part-time employment opportunities can have a shot at that. This also comes home to me because I got the question yesterday from my granddaughter about whether I could help her find a summer job. So this is not something I'm oblivious to, and I don't need a forum to have that posed to me. I didn't have a ready answer for her either. So this is not a small problem, and we are sensitive to it. What we need to do is to grow the pie rather than necessarily kid ourselves into thinking that we can have city employment fill that gap.
Thank you. Jackie.
So I've been one of the greatest advocates on the City Council for youth employment and training opportunities since I was elected to the council in 2007. And one of the outgrowths of my work, both in terms of violence prevention, has been the 2020 initiative, which includes an employment and training component, specifically for at-risk youth and young adults. In 2008, I was the chair of the Ad Hoc Committee on Youth, Family, and Neighborhoods, and through that committee, we were able to come to a consensus that even though Pasadena is very rich in resources and nonprofits and opportunities for youth, most of those services end once a youth graduates from high school. And so I've been very intentional about making sure that there are employment opportunities for youth post-high school. And I've also been a big advocate for expanding our Summer Rose program, which is the summer jobs program, and it's partially funded with the county, so I've also been actively lobbying that we can get additional monies through the Foothill Workforce Investment Board, of which I'm currently the chair of the policy boards, to make sure that we can get additional grant dollars to expand the program. Every single year that we put out applications for the program, it's approximately 500, and I promise you they go within, a few hours, if that. And so clearly the need is there for additional jobs. I also believe that our business community has to step up as well and be a partner in offering these summer employment opportunities to youth, because there's been so many instances where I've been told that, there's a sign clearly in the window that says we're hiring, and it's an entry-level high school type job that, they're not able to hire enough of our Pasadena youths. And so I'm supportive of the Pasadena City Hall program that we use to pay half of the salaries and hopefully encourage our businesses to be willing to pay half of it as well. But I think it's a multi-pronged approach to make sure that we can expand our financial resources in the city so that we can make sure that youth are served as well.
Thank you both.
Thank you. And next question is from Frank.
Okay. Hi. Thank you. Here's a bad word. #gentrification. It's one of these things that comes up when you talk about Pasadena a lot, because there's all these competing interests, and I think this theme is weaving its way through a lot of the questions. There is a serious lack of affordable housing. There is an obvious move towards gentrification, I think, which is a nice way to put it in some neighborhoods. And the question is, what can the mayor do for Pasadena to help make neighborhoods livable, offer affordable housing, but at the same time, prevent the sort of idea or even the practice of gentrification, pricing people out of homes in neighborhoods where they and their families have lived for years. And this question, goes to you first, Jackie.
Sure. So I'm going to disagree with the proposition that the city as an institution is pricing people out of their homes. I think we're all very familiar with the market, and the city council or the mayor by no means controls the market. But what we do control are the policies that either encourage or discourage people to, purchase homes, be able to afford homes, and frankly, apartment rent in certain portions of the city. I have firsthand experience with this because I am, out there as a renter in the market, and Pasadena is very expensive. And I believe that we need to be creative because, again, at the root of all of these issues is funding and priorities. And I think that in terms of the affordable housing crisis that we find ourselves in, we have to be creative. And that means doing things that don't require any money, such as lowering the threshold requirement for the second unit ordinance, which allows people that have the room and space available on their already owned property to build second units. I think that also means having uncomfortable conversations about things like rent stabilization. And just because we have a conversation does not mean that it's going to be passed, but if we're not willing to at least have the conversations and be creative about the methods that we're going to choose to resolve some of these issues, if we're only waiting on City Hall to resolve it, frankly, that's very unlikely to happen. And so I think that we do have to have those tough conversations and look to the models of other cities to see how we can best serve some of our neediest constituents in the city. And I think we also have to as well look at home ownership opportunities and programs to allow first-time home buyers the resources so that they can stay in Pasadena, especially those families that have been here for a long time and wish to remain here.
Councilman Tornay.
I think that there are some tried and true techniques that do preserve affordable housing in cities and allow for maintaining the kind of diversity that we pay lip service to but don't always really support. For example, when I was on Pasadena Neighborhood Housing Services Board, when I first came to Pasadena and for 20 years thereafter, we had a first-time homebuyers program. And that was a method where we could get people into housing by the city providing some funding. Sleeping second is what it's called, sleeping second mortgage, so that the people, and help with the down payment so they could begin to get on the housing ladder and afford to buy in Pasadena. Last night we did not pass a project, but eventually will, that was building 475 market rate units. And because of our inclusionary housing program, that project would generate $13 million in fees to the In Lieu Housing Fund, which could be used in that way to either provide for a first-time housing homebuyers program or to buy down rents in existing housing so that people weren't priced out of the market. So we cannot intervene in the marketplace to the extent that will reverse the tide in terms of Pasadena being an attractive place and pressure, up pressure on rents. But we can be strategic and we can be smart about how we can intervene in specific locations and with families to help them stay in Pasadena if they'd like to. And I think we can be effective in doing that.
Right,
Is there-
thank you. Oh, my apologies.
There's a rebuttal.
Yes, I saw it. Vice Mayor.
Not really a rebuttal, just an additional statement that I want to make. I think when we talk about gentrification, it connotates a negative word, and I prefer to think about gentrification as diversification. And with gentrification or diversification, I think it comes with positive additions to a neighborhood, and that's one of the things and one of the discussions that we've been having on the Lincoln Avenue corridor. When I was elected to the City Council, one of the projects that I decided to take on was the revitalization of Lincoln Avenue. And in 2013, the City Council passed the first ever Lincoln Avenue specific plan. And as a result of that, we're now seeing the effects of additional businesses coming to the corridor, different types of people that were not previously in the neighborhood. And that's uncomfortable for some people, but we're having those conversations, and it has resulted in a greater awareness and improvements along the corridor. And so I think that it's something that we can look to as an asset versus a negative connotation.
Thank you.
And before I ask my question, can I ask for a rebuttal or just a statement from Councilman Tornick? Jackie brought up rent control, and I think that in the front page article in the Star News today, Terry, you answered that you weren't in favor of rent control, but how do you stand on, Jackie also brought up granny flats. How do you stand on granny flats?
I think granny flats sound nice, and I think that we should raise we should reduce the threshold in terms of the minimum size lot on which you can build a granny flat. But the granny flat, I mean, before you get excited, granny flats will never have a significant impact on the affordable housing crisis in Pasadena. It's an illusion, and it misleads people for several reasons. One is that unless we're prepared to sacrifice the quality of our single-family neighborhoods and allow really proliferation, basically the conversion of a single-family neighborhood to a multifamily neighborhood, with the implications of on-street parking and reduced side yards and a whole diminution in the standards of a single-family neighborhood, we can destroy single-family neighborhoods in what I think will be an ineffectual attempt to achieve affordable housing. Building that granny flat, the expense of doing that will really preclude making it really affordable housing. So I think it's one of those nice ideas that doesn't stand up to scrutiny.
Rebuttal to the rebuttal.
Sure. I reject the notion that just because you offer residents an option means that they're going to take advantage of it. Right now we have the second unit ordinance, and it's been a failure because in the more than 10 years since it's been on the books, there's only been 3 projects that has been attempted and that started the plans, and only 1 actually attempted and it failed. And so I believe that just because we offer an option doesn't mean everyone suddenly there's going to be a proliferation of granny flats, but I do believe if we're going to have it on the books as an option, that it should be a usable ordinance. So again, and I also want to correct the record in terms of rent stabilization. I did not say I was for rent stabilization or rent control. I said we have to be willing to have difficult conversations, and that's one of them.
Thank you, thank you. So we've already brought it up to a certain extent, but we want to bring it up to a greater extent right now, the minimum wage, the pressure that the city's going to be under with the county supervisors now saying 5-0, they're looking toward a big hike. The city of LA is looking toward a big hike, $13, $15 maybe. But the median income for families in Pasadena right now is about $65,000, which is $10,000 below what the state says it costs to live in this county. So as the mayor, you clearly will both have the opportunity to shape the discussion about living wages, about minimum wage hikes, but also you're going to be under a lot of pressure. I can guarantee you that's the kind of pressure, Terry, you were under when you're talking to the restaurateurs, who I don't think were probably lobbying you for a minimum wage hike. They're up in arms about it. So how will you use that bully pulpit as mayor to press for higher wages or to stay with the status quo? Who's first?
Ms. Robinson.
It goes to Jackie. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So again, I have been on the record, and I can publicly state that I am for a Pasadena-wide city minimum wage. However, again, that's one of the difficult conversations that's going to have to be had, not just with our residents and our visitors, but also the business community, especially restaurateurs. And we're by no means at any end result of how we would even implement it or if it's even going to come forward, but we're at the very beginning stages. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are other cities across the nation that have instituted minimum wage policies that we can look to as models and adjust and adapt for the Pasadena way, so to speak. And I don't think this subject matter is any different. Of course, there's going to have to be concessions made for small businesses and businesses that perhaps employ youth and other things like that. And so I do believe that it's a discussion that Pasadena is ripe for and one that I would support.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilman Tornick.
I think that there's real momentum building behind the minimum wage discussion, and I think it's appropriate. I'm supportive of an increase. I don't think it's plausible to support a family on $18,000 a year. And increasingly, the studies have determined that they're not kids that are being paid minimum wage, but something, depending on the study and the location, up to 70% of the people that are in minimum wage jobs are primary wage earners rather than kids working after school. So I've begun discussions with the restaurateurs. It's not just the restaurateurs, but small merchants who are concerned. And there are a whole host of complicated issues. We need to do what we usually do on important issues in Pasadena, and that is to cast our net very widely, a very thorough public discussion, understand what the varying points of view are, and then reach a conclusion that we think makes sense for our community. I do think it will be effective, most effective, if we work in conjunction in terms of timing with the City of Los Angeles, because they are the dominant economic force in the region. We have some cities taking out positions already. Maybe it's apocryphal, but I'm told that Glendale's already calling businesses in Los Angeles, trying to recruit them and say, we'll never have an increased minimum wage here. As I say, that may be an apocryphal story, but it's indicative of the fact that people understand that there's a potential differential advantage that we don't want to suffer from. But I am committed to working hard on this, and I'm confident, even after talking with a fairly hostile group, that we can arrive at some conclusion that will work in the city's best interest, especially in the best interest of the people who are at the lower end of the pay scale.
Okay.
Thank you. And our next question is from Frank. We have just a couple more to go.
Now we swapped because I'm taking it because I'm the water guy. I'm the water guy, and I on our editorial board I fill that role. But I'm obsessed with this issue as a person who has a garden. So here we've been through the supposed wet season, right? And during that wet season, we were supposed to only water our yards once a week, and we picked a day. Mine is Thursday, by the way. If you come by on a Sunday and you see the sprinklers going, call the cops. But yeah, don't call the cops. But the fact of it is, we didn't have a wet season. Now we're going, ostensibly, Water and Power is going to tell us with the summer that we can go back to watering 3 days a week, just like that neighbor of mine does, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays when the rainbirds go. Very powerful lawyer in town.
Their address, why don't you?
Yeah, a very powerful lawyer in town. So I'm obviously saying people aren't sticking to the Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday. But also, it seems to me that there's a very real possibility that we're going to need to stay at once a week going into the dry months. So is that a possibility? Should the city, when this change is supposed to come, when the spring is over, keep the one a week, or should it not?
We've already begun those discussions. We had it at the last Municipal Services Committee meeting. We had a presentation on the issue. I think it's very likely that we will go to 2 days a week. And one of the great issues, it's so kind of representative of all the kinds of public policy issues that we're confronted with. So the issue comes up on the city is going to impose, for example, a 2-day limit on everyone. And yet on sports fields, we find it necessary to water 3 days a week.
So the Rose Bowl only gets watered 3 days a week?
Because it will, we're talking about kids' play fields.
So the Area H, the soccer fields or whatever?
Are you going to let me?
Yeah.
So the point is that the fields are not playable unless they're adequately watered. They're actually dangerous. We've got this policy that says we want to have kids playing sports and playing on the fields because otherwise they get in trouble. So it's a matter of public policy saying that we want to have effective watering so that the kids can play on the fields, and yet, at the same time, we have another public policy that says, how can we ask the general public to reduce its water consumption when they drive by a city park and see the sprinklers going 3 days a week? That's one of those issues, and that's what we're working through now. Those are discussions that we have in public. Our friends from the Sierra Club attend all these meetings, and we will find some happy middle ground here. But this water issue is not something that we're going to be escaping either in Pasadena or anywhere in the West. And we are going to have to be, when I walk around and suggest to people that they might consider having a water-wise front yard, and I have a homeowner tell me, but dear, this is what makes Pasadena, you know, I mean, she thinks she lives in Surrey or someplace.
You don't want to lose that vote.
It's a difficult problem.
It is. Vice Mayor.
Yes, I do think that when it comes before the council, we should continue limiting consumption. Of course, during the hot summer season, it's more difficult to keep our yards as green as we would like them to be, but I think research and just common knowledge and practice shows that we're not going to be out of the California drought. To me, the California drought is indefinite at this point, and so we can't necessarily rely on the weather conditions to determine whether or not we're going to continue conserving. I do also want to add that in terms of conservation and personal practice, it's a lifestyle. We're not going to enforce our way into, you know, forcing people to only water one time a week. We definitely don't want to have a police state or, you know, a police city. We want people to do the right thing. We don't want to just, you know, continue to give tickets just for the sake of, you know, giving them. And so I think it's a combination of education and personal practice in order to make sure that our residents have the tools and the information they need to help the city contribute. And we also have to make sure that the city is not doing as we say, not as we do. That there's not that going on as well, even though there has to be some concessions made in terms of the fact that our fields are available to hundreds of youth and users in the city, whereas a homeowner, it's essentially just for their personal use. So I believe that we have to keep that in mind as well.
So do you think it's twice a week is the right number as we go into the summer rather than going back to 3 days a week?
1 to 2 times a week seems reasonable. But again, we have to adjust our thoughts about, you know, what it means to have all of this beautiful green space in Pasadena and not being able to have water in order to support that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I have a response.
A response?
Yes, please.
We will have a, one of the things that one of my colleagues, Margaret McCaustin, has decided to do is to hold basically a council public hearing workshop on this issue so that we can both engage the public to get their point of view on these issues and inform them about what the realities are of how we're going to cope with this going forward. I'm pretty confident we're going to wind up in a two-day a week rather than a 3-day a week cycle.
Okay, thank you both.
Thank you. We have one question before we move to our closing statements, and the next question is from Frank.
Thank you, and this will go to Vice Mayor Robinson first. So I drive a gas-guzzling V8 made in Detroit, and quite often I make a journey from Long Beach to Pasadena, and when I get to Alhambra, it's the worst commute of all time. Now, I used to be the guy that blamed South Pasadena for this problem, and in fact, many times I would just drive through South Pasadena very slowly and make gestures and say things. I always could kind of count on Pasadena as being, you know, supportive of this idea of moving people from Long Beach to Pasadena. And, you know, Jackie, for a while, I think you were one of those people that were kind of supportive of having the 710 be a complete freeway. Well, this campaign has shown that just about everybody in Pasadena is against this, even as Caltrans and Metro are saying, well, we're going to go ahead and build a tunnel, a 5 or 6 mile long tunnel that goes right under all those homes in El Sereno and South Pasadena and back up again in at California or Del Mar here in Pasadena. So now that they say they're probably going to do that, what do you do as mayor? Do you fight Caltrans? Do you take them to court? Or do you let it happen?
Well, first, I'm going to correct the record. I have never said that I was for the tunnel option. What I did say was that I believe that it's bad precedent to be making decisions without full information. And at the time, when the last, at least 2 times that I can remember, that council had that discussion, the EIR was not completed. The EIR is not now, is out now, and we do have adequate information. And I have stated on the record that I'm against the tunnel option. And as mayor, And in fact, the City Council, in I believe 2 weeks, is going to have yet another discussion about taking a public city stance on specifically the tunnel option, but also receiving the information from the 710 working group and figuring out what we want to advocate for. I am a believer in multiple modes of transportation, and so I do think that we have to look closely at the other 4 options that are presented in the EIR. And as mayor, I would be committed to taking on the position of the general community and advocating that both at Metro and at Caltrans and all of the different points of decision-making as this project goes on.
Before you answer.
We have a kind of an interesting dilemma in Pasadena because the voters years ago passed a measure that instructed the city council not to oppose the completion of the freeway. And that position is, I think, still subscribed to by a fair number of people in Pasadena. The reality is that as I've spent a lot of time on this and looking at the analysis, and my conclusion from my review of the available data is that the project will not benefit Pasadena and only marginally benefit the region. The time savings, the street congestion reduction are temporary. All it does is shift the traffic jams from one series of locations to another series of locations. And even in the areas in my district, in District 7, where the street traffic would be reduced a little bit for a period of time, within a very short period of time, they'd be back up to the levels that they're at already. So we will have expended $5 or $6 or $7 billion to build a tunnel that really doesn't provide any significant advantage. It just doesn't make any sense. So my suggestion was that we form this working group and study an alternative that, since we can't oppose the tunnel or the completion of the freeway, what we need to do is to find an alternative that we can be in favor of. Measure A did not preclude that. And that is what is going to happen, I hope, on the meeting on the 13th, which is devoted entirely to this subject, where the working group will be making its recommendation on a Pasadena preferred alternative, which I think will actually serve the interests not just of Pasadena, but of the region more effectively than the tunnel alternative.
Wouldn't that be cool to be in gridlock in the tunnel?
It's not a laughing matter, folks, or a fire in the tunnel.
All right, thank you. That concludes. Is my mic not? Oh, there we are. All right, thank you. That concludes our questions for this evening. We are going to move to our candidate closing statements, and thank you to all of you who are still here with us in the audience. First to give closing statement is Vice Mayor Robinson.
So again, thank you to all of you that have taken a part of your evening to come and listen to us share our vision for Pasadena. Again, I believe that my greatest asset and the reason why you should vote for me as mayor is because I have the necessary both personal experience here in Pasadena and professional experience as a member of the city council, in fact for 8 years and the last 2 years as vice mayor, that has adequately prepared me to serve not just the constituents in my district, but the constituents and residents and visitors and all of the stakeholders across the city. I've built a reputation of being visible in the community, of being hands-on, not just in the touchy-feely, happy situations, but also being willing to be uncomfortable and be in front of crowds when we may not necessarily agree. I'm proud to be endorsed by a number of prominent organizations and individuals, but my greatest endorsement would be from all of you, and I humbly ask you for your vote on April 21st. Again, I'm supported and endorsed by the Pasadena Police Officers Association, the National Women Political Caucus of Greater Pasadena, the LA County Democratic Party, as well as the LA County Federation of Labor. And again, I hope to add you to those lists of supporters and ask for your vote. I encourage all of you, if you have additional questions about my candidacy or about me personally, to please contact me. My campaign contact is 626-559-1103, and my website is JackieRobinsonForMayor.com. Thank you again for listening tonight.
Well, thank you again to the Star News for organizing this enterprise. It turned out to be sort of fun. And again, thank you so much for almost no one's left. I mean, we get to watch and see who's been sneaking out, and most of you are still here. And I'm grateful for that because I think it does demonstrate the level of commitment that people have to our community. You've heard our responses to some pretty good questions tonight, some of them new and some of them that we've heard a lot. We have somewhat different views about approaches and how we might accomplish certain kinds of things. But I think that what we all share is a real commitment to the city, and that includes everyone, not just who's running, but everyone in the room. I've been listening carefully to what people have to say around the city. The reason for my big walk around town was obviously to introduce myself to people, but also to hear what people had to say. And I've learned a lot. And when people talk with you on their front porches, it's a vastly different experience than what happens in City Hall, where they have to stand up in front of a crowd and they're limited to 3 minutes and that sort of thing. And if they can invite you in, even if they want to lecture you about their lawn, it's a useful learning experience for me, and I commend it to some of the people at the Star News. But I think that if you give me the opportunity, I will work hard. I am a hard worker, and I'm not always the smartest guy in the room, but I'm always the best prepared guy in the room. I care actively what you think about. I'm experienced, and I have a lot of relevant experience to the job at hand. I will represent all of the citizens in Pasadena. I'm not afraid of the tough issues like the minimum wage or what to do about the tunnel. I thrive on them. So I ask you for your consideration. If you have any questions, call me at 375-0075. I'll actually talk to you. And I ask you for your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you again to our candidates for joining us tonight. Good luck on April 21st. Everyone here, please vote. Just want to say a couple additional thank yous. First to the Pasadena Unified School District for hosting us tonight. Also to Principal Mark Anderson for joining us. On behalf of publisher Ron Hassey, who joined us this evening, Executive Editor and Vice President Michael Anastasi, and myself, thank you so much for joining us.